Because when you got Jesus, the devil cannot win because he's already won. If I can just go to Calvary right now, it'll be just fine. But you got to know it was at Calvary that the victory was won and the battle has already been fought. So really, we got bragging rights in that it's not a fair fight because we've got Jesus. So it's really not a fight because we're already, Bible tells us we're already more than conquerors through him that loved us. And somebody need to know the love of God. God loved us so much that he gave his life for us. And who wouldn't serve a God that would love you so much that he'd give his own life for you? Is there anybody in here that would be willing to give their own? Nobody but Jesus. Who is this Joseph? Who is this Joseph? Because we got to realize in this life, and the enemy is laughing and mocking, but what the enemy doesn't realize is that when you've been chosen by God, there's a level of favor that go along with it. Joseph was chosen by God, but he was also favored by his father. And favor has never been fair. Now, there's one thing you'll always see in the Bible. You'll see the word favor when it comes to God. But you'll never see in the text, anywhere in the text, where the Bible talks about God being fair. And now some of y'all gonna get quiet on me because all y'all know is to be fair. But you got to realize you're dealing with God. God is not fair. God is righteous. So whatever God does, he does what is right. And it may not be fair. Favor. I'll tell you how it works. I was going to the courthouse Monday morning to drop some papers off. Anybody's been to the courthouse lately? You got to go through this wand and take all your stuff out your pockets and put them in a box and go through this scanner. And then after that, they got to take the wand, go up and down. I knew all this, but I had forgotten and left my phone in my. Normally, I leave all my stuff in there so I won't have to take all this stuff. I done left everything. Here I am, Lord, I know I got to go dump all this stuff out of my pocket. And so I go inside and I get there, and all of a sudden, gentleman says, hey, gentleman in front of me got up. He began to walk towards me. And then the other officer looked up and said, hey, hold up. He all right. He said, go ahead. He said, you see that man right there? That's the preachingest man I know. He said, you can go ahead and go. I said, yeah. I said, all I got to do is run over here and drop off an envelope, and I'll be on my way. But then there was a line of folk. They had to take all their stuff out, drop it out. And when I came through the door, he said, hold up. This man right here, you go ahead. You ain't got to go through. I know this man. But there was a line. Don't y'all miss that. Some folk that needed to put their stuff in there. I left all my stuff in my pocket. I went on in, did what I had to do. And then when I came back, I shook his hand. I said, thank you very much. I'm so happy that you were here today because I recognize today favor ain't fair. So Curry and I was in the grocery store just the other day, and we had a few groceries in our hands, and we were coming through, and all of a sudden there were some folks in front of us that had just a little bit more than we did, and every time we got to one, they tell us, go on in front of us. Y'all ain't got to go on. And before you know it, instead of us being 4 or 5 buggies behind, we were next in line. Y'all don't understand. Sometimes God does stuff that don't make sense. It didn't make sense for them to let us in front of them, but the fact that God operates in favor sometimes, favor ain't always fair. You wonder why so-and-so got this and so-and-so got that. Listen, you need to understand it. We need to stop worrying about what so-and-so got and start looking at what God is doing in our life. And when we really begin to see what God is doing in our lives, everybody in here, up in here, up in here, up in here got something to be thankful for. Stop looking at what other folks got and start looking at what God is doing in your life. And then when you really look around and see what he's doing, don't forget to tell him, thank you. I need somebody here just to get up one more time and tell God, thank you. Joseph was favored by Jacob in so much that Jacob gave Joseph a coat of many colors. And Joseph was down the line. Joseph was close to the baby. And Reuben was the oldest. And if anybody should have gotten the coat, should have been the oldest son, because the oldest son always gets the inheritance. But Joseph was Jacob's favorite. In fact, Joseph's mama was Jacob's favorite. And he had to end up working 14 years before he could even get her, because that's the one he wanted. But Joseph began, that's another thing we need to understand. Listen, when God bless you, you ain't got to go around here and be arrogant with it. And if you're going to do any bragging, please make sure you give God all the credit. See, a lot of us, when God bless us, we get our chest stuck out and we make it look like we did it all by our lonesome self. But listen, whatever God is doing in your life, however God is blessed, don't forget to tell your neighbor, I never could have made it if it had not been for the Lord. In other words, whatever God is doing, listen, make sure you give God all the glory. Where you living today, give God all the glory. What you driving today, give God all the glory. Where you working today, give God all the glory. But Joseph was walking around with this coat, flown. And them brothers got mad and sold him off into slavery. But you got to realize things that look strange, that look difficult, sometimes look weird, and doesn't look like it makes sense. In most cases, in the natural sense, if it don't make sense, it must be God. If it don't make sense in a natural sense, it must be God, because God does things that from a natural perspective don't make sense. Why would he allow them to sell this boy into slavery? Well, God had a plan. You need to understand, I don't know what you're going through today. I don't know what the problem is, and I don't know why you can't praise him right now. I don't know why your lips stuck out. I don't know why you look like you've been eating on sour lemons and grapes all morning, but I want to share with you today. I don't care what you're going through. Listen, you need to go ahead and be thankful, be grateful, go on and bless him, go on and give him praise, because whatever God is doing, I know it may be rough right now, but you need to know that my God got a plan for your life, and when God gets through with you, sold him into slavery, put into prison. But he was put next to a man by the name of Potiphar, who recognized that he was gifted, because not only did he have a coat of many colors, but he had a gift. He could interpret dreams. And that gift made room for him, because Potiphar made him his right-hand man. But even when God begins to elevate and to put you in places that you need to be, you got to know haters are always going to show up some way, somehow. Potiphar's wife, looking at that young Joseph, decided she wanted him for herself and came on to him. But this Joseph knew that God was doing something and refused her advance. Sometimes you got to learn how to just say no. Everything, mama said, everything look good. Come on, talk to me, somebody that grew up like I ain't always good for you. She said, be careful what you choose and what you do. Joseph knew that and rejected her advances. But yet, a woman scorned. Can I just make her mad if you want to? She was hurt and she lied. Told Potiphar that he made advances unto her, and Potiphar, after knowing Joseph all this time, it was hard for him to believe that the Joseph that was serving under him would do something like that. So difficult that in reality he believed Joseph more than he did his wife. But it caused him a little trouble. It caused him a little pain. To now he's gone down into the lower dungeon. And now he's down there with a baker and a butler. Somebody say elevation. because it didn't look like he was going up. It looked like he was going back. But sometimes God have to take you through things that don't seem like it's going the right way. But at the end of the day, when God get ready to turn it around, you'll understand that the turning around is God's way of showing you that he's able to lead you in another direction. You just got to be patient and be faithful even when it seems like it's not working in your favor. To be put in the lower dungeon didn't seem to be working in Joseph's favor. But the baker and the butler had an opportunity to make some trips up to Pharaoh. Now, both of them made a promise that when they got to Pharaoh, that they would tell of this wonderful man who's able to interpret dreams. Because while he was down there, he was able to interpret the dreams of both the baker and the butler. Made promises that when they got to Pharaoh, they would remember old Joseph. And Pharaoh had his own problems. And ultimately, when God was ready to elevate him, Pharaoh had his own problems. In that before it was all said and done, Joseph went from the lower parts of the prison. Now he's at Pharaoh's court. And you don't know why God has you where you are right now. But I want to know that where you are right now is not indicative of where you're going to be when God gets through with you. Listen, you need to know you're going somewhere. If you're going through something, you need to know you're going somewhere. If you ain't going through nothing, I come to tell you, you ain't going nowhere. But I ought to have somebody that's going through something. If you going through something, I come to celebrate with you today. I come to high five you and let you know you going somewhere. You say, oh, blues on no pain. Talk to me, somebody. Y'all ain't always been saved. It was the pit that prepared him for the palace. You don't have any experiences in life, you're not going to be able to handle being elevated. If you ain't never been down before, you'll never appreciate being up. You got to understand the importance of being down. It's at your lowest moment that you learn just how good God is. Joseph goes from pit to palace. Foretells the dream of this Pharaoh. Pharaoh elevates him to governor. In that Joseph has foreseen 7 years of prosperity, but he's also foreseen 7 years of famine. Pharaoh puts him over all that he has. Joseph was able to come up with a budget and a plan by which they would save enough bread and grain that in the 7 years of famine, there'll not only be enough for Egypt, but there'll be enough for many who are yet coming into the city. But by the time they get there, Joseph's brothers and their families are experiencing this famine. In so much to now their father has sent them into Egypt to buy grain. When they get there, the very one they sold into slavery is the very one they got to deal with. See, that's why I come to tell you today, you need to understand the importance of thanking God for your haters. Because if you didn't have haters, then you wouldn't have any elevation. You have to understand, it's your haters that promote you to the palace. If you didn't have any haters, listen, you wouldn't pray the way you pray, but you pray the way you pray because there are some folk that don't mean you any earthly good. And every now and then you need to go down on your knees and say, Father, forgive them. Jesus said, listen, if you really want to show the marks of a mature Christian and that you're on your way, he said, love those who despitefully use you. God told Abraham this, listen, I'm going to bless those who bless you, but then I'm going to curse those who curse you. You just got to realize the importance of you being a blessing to everybody else. So they get to the palace. Lo and behold, it looked like, it sounded like, he kind of made up like us, but there's something different. He's been in Egypt for so long that he still has some characteristics of them, but he don't quite look like them. And you need to understand, when you've gone through some stuff, you'll never look like what you... Listen, if he had been sold into slavery, then he should have been in rags. He should have been looking dirty. He should have been in chains. He should have his hair long and not combed. But he was up in the palace. He's wearing fine clothes. He's looking like somebody, but he didn't look like he looked when he was in prison. He's looking something totally different. In other words, he didn't look nothing like he looked when he was sold into slavery. He's actually looking better. Don't miss that today. Listen, you need to understand, when you start out, it don't always look good. And sometimes in between, it doesn't always look good. But I come to tell you, at the end of the day, you'll never look like what you've been through. Many people look at me and listen, I'm about 75%, but I can take you back about 9 years ago, I can take you back to a place and a time where it didn't look like I was going to make it. I can take you back to a place where it looked like on the operating table I might not pull through. I can give you a day that I can remember my wife driving me down the road and I had my head stuck out the window gasping for air because I didn't feel like I was going to make it. That was 8 years ago, and I want to share with you today, in between them 8 years, I've had some more things happen in my life, but I come to share with you today, I'm not crying about the stuff that I've gone through. I'm not throwing no pity party because they had to do some surgery up in here. Every morning I get up. I thank God for giving me just one more day, and I'm so glad I don't look like I don't look nothing like what I did 8 years ago. In fact, I feel a whole lot better today than I did 8 years ago. What are you saying, Reverend? You need to get to the point that Joseph had gotten to. God had fixed it for him. But this time, he learned how to appreciate where God had brought him. Remember, I told you in the beginning, he was walking around flaunting in the coat and had his own brothers mad at him. What happens when they come to Egypt is that he has sorrow for them. And he realized that had he not gone and been arrested, had he not been put into slavery, his family wouldn't have the opportunity that they had when they came unto Egypt. The only reason God allowed Joseph to be sold into slavery is because God had a plan for his children Israel. And had Joseph not been there in the palace, they would not have gotten what God had for them. Sometimes you have to be a sacrificial lamb, not just for yourself, but you have to be a sacrificial lamb for everybody else. And nobody wants to take a back seat for the sake of everybody else. So many want to be out on Front Street. So many want to tell others what to do and how, but nobody's willing to take a back seat for everybody else. Joseph understood it. But his father, when they did recognize who it was, they went back to their father and told him that he was alive. He says, well, I'll tell you what you need to do. You need to go and beg him pardon and ask him to forgive you. Before Jacob dies, he says, you need to go to your brother and make it right with your brother. And some of y'all sitting here today got some grudges with some family members. Some of you here today got some grudges with some church members. Some of you here today got some grudges with some folks that's on your road right now. And I come to tell you today, listen, today may be your last day. And whatever grudge you got with your brother, you need to let that stuff go today before you leave here. Before you take this bread and this wine, you need to let that stuff go. You need to let them know. You need to let them know that I'm sorry. Forgive me if I did anything wrong. Listen, remove me. Listen, forgive me. We need to let this stuff go, because if we don't let this stuff go, hell gonna be our home. We can't love one another. We can't hug one another. And then some of the hugs is fake. What is that? Jacob said, make it right with your brother. And if your heart is right. See, this is what you need to understand, because some of y'all are fearful about going to your neighbor. But if your heart is right, God will fix it before you get there. That's what y'all need to understand. If your heart is right, if your intentions is right, God will fix it before you get there. They thought Jacob had the same attitude. They thought he was going to brag and talk about, see, y'all see what y'all did to me, see what happened, see what. But no, they thought. And that's what's wrong with a lot of people. We try to analyze how the thing going to turn out before we even do it. And sometimes it hinders us from doing what we know to do is right. They went to their brother and said, listen. In fact, no, let me get it right. They sent their servant. They sent a middleman called they were Shane. And that's what, see, they don't realize, that's what haters will do for you. Yeah. Haters will have other folk joining. Listen, haters will have other folk working for you. And they don't even know nothing about it. And so they become the mediator between brothers. And little did they know, Jacob had already forgiven them. Jacob was ready to bless them. And when the time came for them to meet with Joseph, text said that they bowed down at his feet. He says, listen, we be your servant. You big dog now. We be your servant. He said, no, y'all don't understand. It ain't even about that. I know what you did to me, and what you did to me, it hurt me. And I had to spend a lot of time thinking about it. You don't realize the prison experience for Joseph was for him to really think about what God was doing. It wasn't about his brothers, but it was about what God was doing. And he understood that. He said, no, what you need to understand, what y'all did had to be done. And what y'all did in an evil conscience. Y'all did it because y'all was mad. Yeah, but God allowed it because he was going to take y'all's anger and turn it around and work it out for their good. Y'all need to understand today that sometimes God has to take evil things and turn them around and work them out for our good. And sometimes he has to use the enemy to do it. Do you believe Pharaoh would have given to Bethlehem and Jerusalem had Joseph not been in the palace? It would have been much harder for Joseph and his family to receive the blessings from Egypt had Joseph not already been there. But because God placed him there, there was purpose for him being there. And even though he had experienced pain and suffering, even though he had some bitterness in his heart, at the end of the day, God was able to turn that thing around, and he became a blessing to the same ones that became a burden. I need to let you know today that our God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above anything we could ever ask or think. He can turn things around. That's what he did one day at Calvary when we were headed for hell. He turned it around and gave his hands to a cross, gave his feet to a cross, and died one Friday so he could turn it around. And early Sunday morning, he turned it around. You know how you thank God for your haters? When Jesus was on the cross and they were nailing him and laughing and mocking him, saying, if you be the Son of God, why don't you save yourself and then save us? Seemed like Jesus would have went back on them, but now Jesus looked up toward heaven and said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. If you really want to hurt your enemy, if you really want to put coals on his head, be kind to your enemy. Because at the end of the day, the enemy will be your footstool. And one thing I understand about a footstool is made for you to reach places that you wouldn't reach on level ground. So I thank God for my enemies, because the footstool helps me reach those places I can't get to on level ground. And I don't know about you, but I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere with Jesus. Learn to thank God for your haters. Because you got to realize it's your haters that help you with your promotion. Come on, celebrate God in this place. Give him glory. Listen, if they ain't hating on you, you ain't going nowhere. But if they hating, let them keep hating, because when they start hating, you know you're on your way. Can you just say, I'm on my way? I'm on my way. I don't know about y'all. I'm on my way. Listen, keep on hating on me. Keep on talking about me. The more you talk about me, the higher I get. I offer you Christ today. Oh, it's painful. Life is painful. But God is working a work. Listen, if we didn't have any pain, if we didn't have any pain, if we didn't have any suffering, we would not know how to celebrate the joy. The Bible teaches us. Psalm 35. He says, God's anger and wrath endure just but for a while. Weeping may endure for a night. He says, but joy coming in the morning. Now, I don't know how long night is going to be. It may just be a little while, but from night to morning, keep trusting God, because you know at some point the night is not going to last, or at some point the sun going to rise. And he said, when morning comes, you can rejoice. And so really, before the sun even crack open for day, you might as well go and get the attitude, I'm going to rejoice. I'm just going to be joyful because I know the sun is going to shine again. To the unsaved today,